given the horrific images coming from Ukraine, the shelling, the bombing, can Ukraine prevail in this war?
I think Ukraine will prevail in this war because the fighting spirit and the spirit in the society is so strong. And I'm pretty sure that Ukrainians as a nation are united about his leader, Volodymyr Zelensky. And our duty is to assist them, to help them to be so strong as they are so far. And of course, Russia is desperate, and we see what Russia is doing. Russia attacks on civil nuclear facilities in Ukraine. This is a crime. This is just a crime, nuclear terrorism, and I call on international reaction. First of all, Atomic Energy Agency should react to what is happening there. And I have to remind you that we have at the border with Lithuania, so-called Ostrovets nuclear power plant in Belarusian territory. So we could become the nuclear hostages because this nuclear power plant could be turned into nuclear weapon too. So this is going far beyond the behavior we could call the behavior of normal human beings.
And Mr. President, just to, of course, you made a very severe statement just there. Just to clarify, what you're saying is that Vladimir Putin already is doing war crimes and that what we're seeing, particularly around this plant, should be considered as terrorism. Is that what you're saying, just to make sure we get your words correct?
I can explain and I can tell very long sentences about what is happening, but I will call it nuclear terrorism because it's indeed nuclear terrorism of what we are witnessing right now.
And the fact that this is nuclear terrorism, I mean, how does that make you feel? We know that yesterday Emmanuel Macron had a call with Vladimir Putin and he came out of it believing that this situation is going to get worse in the next few days. So how can you deter further aggression? What we're seeing already is very ugly.
First of all, very strong response in many means, with all means. And first of all, we have to talk about even stronger sanctions on Russia. We have to stop to buy the oil and energy resources from this country. Lithuania is ready. Lithuania is ready to have alternative resources, alternative channels to buy crude oil from other countries, not from Russia. We are not dependent anymore on natural gas coming from Russia because we have LNG terminal in Klaipėda established. So those are the measures we took in the past, and they help us to just to be a part of this anti-Russian coalition, because this behavior is absolutely not tolerable. And we have to do everything in our hands to stop, to prevent Russia. And of course, we should talk about full disconnection of Russian banks from the SWIFT system. So far, we implemented some selective steps, decisions. They are not sufficient. Secondary sanctions for those who violate the existing ones. And I would like to say that there are countries which might help assist Russia to avoid the primary sanctions. This is also the matter of our discussion. I hope that next week we will have an informal meeting of European Council in Paris. And I think the big part of our discussion will be dedicated to Ukraine and those recent steps, recent decisions of Russia.
How will the war be resolved? The sanctions so far have been swift, they've been aggressive, they have not deterred President Putin. Will he stop at nothing in order to actually take over Ukraine?
But we can do more. First of all, we have to assist Ukrainians to withstand in this fight. And of course, we have to take all the measures, military, finance, economic. But yes, I agree with you that so far, because of brutality and because of very cynical approach of Russian government, Unfortunately, those sanctions didn't have that impact we could expect. But it does not mean that those sanctions are ineffective, and we have to continue, and we have to press Russia to put it to the corner, to isolate from every organizations in the world, cultural, sport organizations, and this is happening right now.
And you say isolate Russia, but the Ukrainians say that what we should do, or what the West should do, by that we I mean, is to make Ukraine a no-fly area with all the risks that carries. Of course, you have to enforce it. That means you'd have to have NATO planes flying over the country. Should there be a no-fly area over Ukraine? And if not, why are you not sending fighter jets for Ukraine?
This is good declaration, but how to implement this declaration practically? If Russian planes will violate this non-fly zone, what will be the instructions on the ground? So this is the reason why we have to assist them with modern air defense systems. But we should very carefully consider to step into the conflict directly. I am talking about NATO, I am talking about Western world.
Is NATO, Mr. President, doing enough to reassure the Baltic countries?
Sorry?
Is the NATO doing enough to reassure the Baltic countries?
I think we feel sufficient support coming, and not only in Ukraine, but also, as you mentioned, in Baltic countries, we see this support, and we see very decisive and immediate reaction. I recall the recent meeting of NATO summit in Brussels. I also see the efforts by Secretary General Mr. Stoltenberg to pay more attention to the whole region, to the whole eastern flank of NATO. Because in the initial stage, there were discussions about Baltic Sea region, not Baltic Sea, but Black Sea region. But now we are in the process of paying more attention and taking more measures to secure and
Mr.
to increase.
President,
Yep.
And Mr. President, you say we've got to pay more attention, but yesterday at 3 a.m. in the morning, Zelensky in his telegram, he put up a video in which he said, if Ukraine fails, the Baltics are next. I know this is a very delicate question, but do you fear for the sovereign integrity of your country? I know it's very delicate, but what Ukraine say is if we're down, the next is the Baltics.
This is exactly the message I'm sending to my colleagues, to the leaders of Western world. Yes, maybe those will be the Baltic countries, maybe it might be Romania or other countries of Eastern Europe, but this is absolutely clear that if Ukraine falls, there will be a second target, and the third one, and so on.